Welcome to the show. I'm Jason Whitlock, and I'll tell you why there's a new protest that could turn the sports world upside down. Speak for Yourself starts now. It's Friday, and I'm so happy Colin has started his Friday early. All right, hello and welcome. Cowherd is out. I'm joined today by Fox NBA analyst Chris Broussard, Fox Sports Radio host Doug Gottlieb, and the founder of the Big Lead, Jason McIntyre. Let's start in San Antonio, guys, where the drama around Kawhi Leonard's injury appears to be growing. Tony Parker, who reportedly led a team meeting to convince Kawhi to play, aired his thoughts on Kawhi's injury today, saying he recovered from a similar type of injury that was, quote, 100 times worse, and that he didn't even think about seeking outside medical advice like Kawhi did. I said this yesterday, and I'm going to repeat it again today. The Spurs are out of bounds. And the more I hear from this, they were out of bounds yesterday. Tony Parker comes out and says even more powerful stuff today. That means Greg Popovich is out of bounds, because no way Tony Parker is freelancing these opinions. They're trying to bully and harass Kawhi Leonard back onto the court. I think it's inappropriate for the players. If Popovich wants to do it, if the training staff wants to do it, but the players injecting themselves into this guy's situation at this level with so much money on the line for this guy's health to be on the line, everybody's body and health is different.
Correct.
Just because Tony Parker recovered or his injury was worse doesn't mean he's Kawhi Leonard. Doesn't mean he puts the same kind of stress on his Kawhi, plays a different game than Kawhi Leonard. I don't like this at all. They need to stop the harassment of Kawhi Leonard.
Don't ever talk about what I do with my money, or don't talk about my family, and don't try and tell me if I'm hurt or if I'm not hurt, right? Those are the rules to athletes in a professional locker room. I am my own best doctor, and I understand that Tony Parker did technically suffer the same injury, but it ain't, because it's a different body. And what they're doing is you're calling Kawhi Leonard a liar, you're calling him a coward. You're saying he's soft, he's putting himself above team. And I understand that this is the Spurs way, much like it's the Patriots way to do in the NFL. But this is a very bad path. And this is the type of path that causes Kawhi Leonard to find a way out of San Antonio. And it's the same path that'll cause others to not want to join San Antonio. Remember, this is the feel-good story was LaMarcus Aldridge comes in and he's going to take Tim Duncan's spot. This is going back a year ago. And then they nearly got rid of LaMarcus in the offseason. And I guarantee with Tony Parker's statement today, this leads to Kawhi going elsewhere.
That statement was strong. And I know Tony, and Tony is a straight shooter. And I don't know, it's hard for me to picture Tony going at Kawhi like this, but I don't know how else you could take this, even if Tony just thinks, I'm just saying what's the truth. But here's the thing. Kawhi has something to lose in this too. I'm on Kawhi's side. I'm with you guys. Your body is your body. However, he has money to lose. They're the only team that can offer him the 5-year, $219 million Supermax. If he goes elsewhere, trade, free agency, whatever, he can't get that offer. Secondly, winning. You are going to be hard-pressed to find a better culture than you've got in San Antonio as far as being able to win championships. Third thing is that Kawhi Leonard, there are people around the league, he's respected and a very good player, and everybody understands wherever he goes, he'd be very good. But there are those that doubt outside of that system that he would be this good, that he would be a superstar, that he doesn't make players better. There are some people that, and I think that's legitimate. Because in San Antonio, they do. In San Antonio, they make players better than they might be.
Chris, I know they've got a great history in San Antonio, but for you to talk about their culture this way when they're doing this guy dirty, I think that's totally
it's a winning culture.
Popovich, yeah, but the culture there is toxic right now. They're going after Kawhi. Popovich at the All-Star break, I don't think he's coming back. Tense team meeting. Manu Ginobili jumps on him this week. Now Tony Parker. They're piling on a guy who's soft-spoken, okay? Kawhi Leonard doesn't talk a lot. He has barely said anything through this whole process. And now you guys are piling on him and driving him. I think they're totally going to drive Kawhi Leonard out. If I'm him, I sit out the entire season, and like Kyrie Irving last year, I demand a trade out of San Antonio. I don't care about that Supermax deal. I don't want to be around guys who are going to talk this smack and you know,
Chris,
make me look bad.
Chris, I want you to answer this question, Chris. Do you think Tony Parker's freelancing this opinion without some sort of tactic approval from Popovich?
I do. I think Tony's just being honest. I've talked to Tony enough times, and I don't want to blame it like it's a language barrier, like he just doesn't have a filter. But Tony just says what he believes. I don't think this is Popovich feeding him. I could be wrong, but I think this is just Tony, and I think he's bolstered by the fact that he had the same injury. To say 100 times worse.
100 times worse.
It was strong. It was.
And to praise the strength and conditioning staff the way he did when Kawhi's been going at him and being
like,
I
don't think there's a problem with praising the condition. They do have a great staff, and it's a staff that's overly cautious.
But you don't have to take shots at Kawhi. You can just say, for me, they were outstanding. You don't need to take shots at Kawhi. That's dirty.
Well, look, the point, though, I've heard the opposite. This is the third best player in the NBA. Okay, you got Durant and LeBron. They're 1 and 2.
He's regarded as that.
Right, and he's an incredible, but he's a much better two-way player. And I'm absolutely sure that the Lakers would take him and that he would fit in quite well to their culture and coming back home. It's just a dangerous game to play. I have no idea. I honestly don't know if Pop is teeing him up. But when you say he was 100 times worse, now you're calling him soft.
This is a teammate for 7 years.
You're calling him soft. And that's no athlete wants to be called soft ever, especially one that's a great defensive player and the type of player that Kawhi purports himself to be. If you're saying you're soft and you're saying you're selfish, your body, your contract is above team, that means you're the anti-Spur. This is the beginning of the end of that relationship.
To me, Popovich no different than Belichick. Nothing goes on in that organization without those guys feeling like they have Pop support in bullying and harassing this guy. They're out of bounds.
Hi, everybody. Colin Cowherd here, and before the show moves along, I want to tell you about Freshly. It's the easiest and most convenient way to eat healthy, no matter what life throws your way. And it throws some things. Even if you get stuck at work late, you still come home to a delicious dinner cooked by a chef. No more worrying about having to figure out what you have left in the fridge, that's me, and especially no mess to clean up. Freshly's chefs source the finest all-natural ingredients. They work with nutritionists to ensure their meals are as healthy as possible. A couple of meals to keep your eye on: the spaghetti squash and meatballs and the turkey shepherd's pie. Restaurant quality and delicious, I've had that. The best part about Freshly is the number of comfort meals, love those, they currently have that are also super healthy. There's no weekly commitment, only get deliveries when you want them. Check out this week's menu. Created by Freshly chefs, get $25 off your first order of 6 chef-cooked dinners, plus free shipping. That's key, free shipping. Go to freshly.com/FoxSports. Freshly.com/Fox Sports. You'll feel so relieved. You come home, no headache. Use Freshly. $25 off your first order.
All right, to the Sweet 16, where we saw a couple of thrillers and some more big upsets last night, with Kansas State toppling Kentucky, while Loyola of Chicago continued their Cinderella run with a win over Nevada. FSU also got in on the upset action, blowing out Gonzaga, while Michigan embarrassed Texas A&M. For my money, Kansas State's win over Calipari's Kentucky Wildcats was the most impressive thing we saw last night. And I say that because I thought the officiating was so atrocious. The officiating dominated the game. 3 Kansas State players, 2 Kansas State starters fouled out of the game. I thought the officiating was leaned towards Kentucky, but I just thought the officiating had way too much influence over the game. And then when you add in that K-State's best player was limited to just 8 minutes, Dean Wade, that he could barely play, and somehow they figured out a way to hold off Kentucky and win that game. Again, I'm not saying K-State's going any further. I'm not saying K-State is a threat to win the national title. But for my money last night, they were the most impressive team.
Oh, I don't think there's any doubt, especially people who are familiar with K-State and their more hate than in the love-hate with Bruce Weber, right?
Yeah.
They've never been happy with having Bruce Weber as their coach since Frank Martin left. And, of course, Bob Huggins got that program up and running. And to do it without Dean Wade and Xavier Sneed being in foul trouble those last 8 minutes and Barry Brown not shooting the ball well. But to me, that was a statement about you have kids that second year, third year, fourth year at K-State, balls on the floor. They got the 50-50 balls. They made the plays down the stretch. They followed the assignments as opposed to Kentucky. I actually think Calipari did a pretty good job with the talent he had. There's this assumption that, well, he's just rolling out there 6, 7 lottery picks. Like, there's probably 2 players to be selected in this year's NBA draft. Maybe 3 if Hami Diallo goes to the pros. because they can't shoot. And if you can't shoot, you don't have skill, it doesn't matter how athletic you are or how good you look in an AAU game. Last night was about skill. Michigan had more skill than Texas A&M. Kansas State had more skill. Loyola had more skill. It's about basketball changing from length, quickness, athleticism. You need all those things, but you also need skill to knock down shots.
No, I'm with you, and that's why Kentucky's athletic, talented, don't really know how to play together, these freshmen. Like you said, some of them probably have their eyes on the NBA, so they weren't going the extra mile like Kansas State did. But I think Michigan was the most impressive. I mean, they actually bludgeoned a team that trampled the second seed North Carolina a week before. They shot 62% from the floor. They hit 14 threes. They only turned it over 7 times. I think Michigan is looking like a team that can win the championship.
That's 2 separate arguments. I agree with you there. I did come away saying, oh, Michigan's the team that could win the title. But for last night,
are you wearing a Chris Webber jersey under that? I just want to check. I know you're tight with Michigan. Guys, I'm sorry. Kansas State was impressive. I'm going Loyola, okay? Think about Loyola's path. They were the best story coming out of the first weekend. I know UMBC was big, but Loyola was, nobody had ever heard of them. You got Sister Jean, more popular than any player left in the tournament. Imagine that pressure, the spotlight on you. The Today Show's talking about Loyola. The late night shows are talking about Loyola, and everybody's rallying around them. They opened the game down 20-8. Oh, Nevada's going to run away with it. And Nevada came back eventually. Loyola, it goes down to the end. For the 3rd time in 3 games, they hit a game-winning shot in the last 15 seconds. To me, I'm waiting for Loyola to fold. I thought that was impressive.
Here's why I disagree with you. Nevada's got a very short bench and rotation. Eventually, that's going to catch up with you, and I felt like that's what caught up to them at the end. I do think it's very impressive, and Loyola's a great story if you're into the Sister Jean movement. But
your mom loves that. I know she's talking to you about it.
People love that, and I get it. It's a cute little story. But again, beating a shorthanded Nevada team that no one really knew much about and had already overachieved, as opposed to Kansas State, Kentucky, Coach Cal, the one-and-done system, and an officiating crew that called 51 fouls.
No, it was awful.
Did Kansas State win, or did Kentucky miss 15 free throws, seemingly every one at the end of the game, to kind of choke that away?
Yes, but part of that is the inherent problem with Kentucky all year is they just didn't recruit enough shooting. To me, and look, the Michigan thing, a lot of it is really about mismatches. If you're Michigan, they spread you out. They put their big guy at the top of the key, and everybody else is spread out. That's really hard for Texas A&M, playing essentially 3 big guys. So some of it was mismatches. But a lot of it is in how, for a long time, assistant coaches have evaluated players. And they go into a gym, and they sit there, and they go, I want that guy. He's long, he's athletic, he can guard, he can move. We're going to make him into something. And whereas Michigan and John Beilein, they're not picking off the top of the deck the way they used to recruit at Michigan. Now they got to get student athletes to get in school and get them to get better. And how about this? You got Charles Matthews, who had 18 for Michigan. He played at Kentucky last year.
Yeah.
He averaged 1.5 points at Kentucky, right? So we take you and we put you in a skill-based system where we share the basketball and open up the floor, and look at how much better you are, how much more we can get out of your talent.
Made a good case for Michigan.
Yeah, you're switching your sides. Come on, flip-flopper.
Part of it is, I think Bruce Weber is one of these really good coaches that people are just insane about. We judge teams and their success and their failure based upon the last game of the year instead of, hey, you're in Manhattan, Kansas, and you're competitive every year and you're not cheating, your kids are graduating. That's what it's supposed to be about.
Well, I was just going to say, all the foul calls disrupted the flow of the game. There really was no flow, and that would have favored players, the type of players that Kentucky have, athletic, long, out the run.
It's funny because I think the intent of calling it tight is so that there's more movement, so that, the more athletic teams win, but it actually had the opposite of the intended effect.
All right, welcome back to the show. Doug Gottlieb and Jason McIntyre are back, and we're joined now by former Pro Bowler T.J. Houshmandzadeh. Let's move to Michael Bennett, who was just charged with a felony in a Houston court over an incident after the Super Bowl in 2017, where he allegedly shoved an elderly, disabled stadium employee so he could celebrate on the field after the Patriots win over Atlanta with his brother, Patriots tight end Martellus Bennett. According to Houston police, there is no video of the incident, but it was witnessed by a police officer. Reportedly, Bennett's new team, the Super Bowl champ Eagles, are aware of the situation. I said it yesterday. Michael Bennett's a poser. He's a wannabe. He's, again, from a great family, and I've seen it a million times. But he is the wrong guy to try to build some kind of social justice warrior, or social activism, or a spokesman for social justice issues, because he doesn't know how to protect his own credibility. He's had the incident with the Las Vegas police where he lied on them and got busted. Now he has this incident, which sounds to me like it's been over-dramatized by the police in Houston. Again, just on the surface, that's how it sounds to me, that they're turning a molehill into a mountain. But you know why they do that? Because you lied on the police in Las Vegas, and then the other police around the country say, okay, we just waiting.
Of course.
Just go anywhere past that white line, go 56 and a 55, and we're gonna get you. And we're gonna say your taillights were busted. And then we're gonna say whatever little thing we can get on you, we're gonna turn it in. And so if you wanna make yourself the face of social justice, activism for athletes, you gotta live a crystal clear, clean life. You gotta be willing to protect, and he's not, because he's a poser, he's immature, he's silly, he's virtue signaling over Twitter. It's not real to him, so he doesn't approach his life in a real way. He's thrown away his credibility, in my opinion.
The idea that there's no video of something that happened at the Super Bowl, where the biggest sporting event in American sports that has more cameras on it, and everyone has a camera on the phone, and it's a year afterwards, right? This is not last year's Super Bowl, it's the previous Super Bowl. It does feel like the cops like, all right, and the little old lady who was a quadriplegic in the wheelchair wasn't toppled over, she was just pushed back, right? This is payback for Las Vegas for what he said.
Appears to be.
It appears to be.
We'll wait and see.
Fair enough. And like, look, I don't know his background in terms of whether or not he's real and this idea of being woke is real or not. But I actually agreed with what he said in regards to what you need in the locker room.
You know, you're taking us off on a
No,
but you are. But you should have came to that first. TJ, I need to hear from you.
So, if anything, what Michael Bennett has done, he's just being real disrespectful to this elderly person. Because, for one, if he shoved his way onto the field, if there's a police officer that supposedly witnessed this, why did they let him continue on the field? You're a police officer. You're there to keep everything in order and stop people from getting on the field that you don't want on the field. So if he shoved his way past everybody, why didn't you stop him? If he wouldn't stop, you arrest him right there on the spot. If anything, they say, oh, we had more important things to do before, because a whole year has passed. I think it's just they want to embarrass Michael Bennett now. He disrespected the older woman. I don't think it's that big of a deal, with the exception of it's what you said. Don't be this social activist and then you do these type of things. You can't play both. You can't play both sides of the fence. You have to figure out what side of the fence you're going to be on.
See, I largely agree with you, what you two are saying. But I guess my question is, if this happened, 16 months ago, 15 months ago, what does his social activism in the time from then to now have to do with the information coming out today? Like, should we put aside everything that he's done in the last 15 months to raise awareness and social activism because this came to light?
No. Again, my deal is, if you're going to operate in that arena, you have to live a very clean life, because there's going to be pushback. Yeah. And it's the Las Vegas deal that opened him up to this kind of pushback, in my view. And so that was just a few months ago, where he's at the fight or whatever, and he's saying inaccurately or lying or whatever, that the police have mistreated him, didn't explain why he got arrested, blah, blah, blah. See, he just drew attention to himself.
Let me ask you, let me follow up with this. So now he's the social justice warrior, as you like to call him, and he's drawing attention to himself, and you know what the other side's going to say. Well, they're coming after him. Look at the Vegas police incident, and now this 16-month-old incident in Houston. He's now a target because he's part of the social activism.
Well,
you know that's coming, though.
For me, why is this an issue where he has to turn himself into the police?
I would agree.
He didn't hurt anybody. He didn't injure anybody.
As far as we know,
didn't assault.
I think they're saying she was injured. Again, it may be over-dramatized.
If she's injured, you're not reporting it 16 months later.
Isn't that what Jason's saying, though? Like, right? Like, the social justice warriors, like, see, they're coming after him with a completely trumped-up charge. I mean, like, this is... and it's a felony? Really?
Right.
This is a felony.
I totally get it. But this is why you don't do the Las Vegas thing. This is why you don't hop, the point you were trying to get to, you don't hop onto a podcast and say, to me, irresponsible things about Russell Wilson and then talk about how you need thugs in the locker room. Again, if you want to operate in the lane that he wants to operate in, there's a way you have to conduct yourself. And he's not doing any of that because it's not real. But it's a shtick for Twitter. It's a shtick for, again, and I've seen it a million times, and TJ, I guarantee you've seen it in the locker room, the black dude from the two-parent family that never missed a meal spends his entire life trying to get arrested damn near.
I had a teammate like that at Oklahoma State, and he was from
somebody
the Bird.
like that on every team where you want to be tougher than what you are.
But that also, I actually think it agrees with his point that he said on Simmons' podcast, which means you can't have all choir boys in the locker room. You need some dudes from other.
We don't need posers.
Huh?
Again,
but
posers are what we talking about.
He didn't say anything about posers, though.
I'm saying about posers.
I'm not disagreeing with you.
He's a poser, and he had, again, posing eventually leads to ramifications like this in terms of the cause he allegedly is for, he's undermining. And he's undermining his own credibility. One, because he's a poser and there's no substance to Michael Bennett.
The sad part about this is this discussion is being had where his character can be somewhat assassinated, and it's not that big of a deal. It really isn't.
I want to correct that. I want to correct this, TJ. I disagree in terms of the level that the police have taken it to. Perhaps you're right, but if security, hey man, you can't go this way.
Don't go.
Don't go.
But
don't
if
feel
there's a police officer there,
I get it.
Why would you let him go?
Clearly, I do believe in this. The police chief has said the way he handled himself is very telling about his character. I think there's some substance to that. Now, they have taken it too far in demanding the man's arrest and putting felony charges on him.
Right.
But I do think the way he handled that situation, there's probably truth in terms of his entitled nature, his bullying, and all that. Again, that's my problem. He's an elitist. He feels entitled.
But he's also, Jason, he's a boy who cried wolf. And remember, when it happened in Las Vegas, the NFL, all of a sudden, they wanted an apology. The Seattle Seahawks threw all their weight behind him in supporting him. And at some point, there is going to be a real incident where a police officer does, steps out of bounds and does too much to a law-abiding citizen, whether it's a player or just an average citizen. And now, all of a sudden, Michael Bennett's led this charge, and we question the veracity of other claims because his claims obviously had no basis.
All right, welcome back. Chris Broussard, Doug Gottlieb, and TJ Houshmandzadeh are back. All right, let's move to Sacramento, where protesters gathered outside the Kings Arena last night, blocking fans from entering and delaying the Kings game against the Hawks. The protest was sparked by the killing of a Sacramento resident, Stephen Clark, an unarmed black man who was shot by police in his grandmother's backyard on Sunday. Before the game started, the Kings owner addressed the crowd that was able to get into the arena.
We are so very sorry. We're so very sorry for your loss. I also wanted to say that we at the Kings recognize your people's ability to protest peacefully, and we respect that. We here at the Kings recognize that we have a big platform. It's a privilege, but it's also a responsibility. It's a responsibility that we take very seriously. And we stand here before you, old, young, black, white, brown, and we are all united in our commitment We recognize that it's not just business as usual, and we are going to work really hard to bring everybody together to make the world a better place, starting with our own community. And we're going to work really hard to prevent this kind of a tragedy from happening again.
I think what Vivek said speaks volume. I mean, I think regardless of your skin color, it's just what's right, what's wrong, and how we can support each other, even if it has nothing to do with you, lend a hand and support. And, I think that's the message that needs to shine through all of this.
All right, I want to have a conversation about this, that we're going to try to stick to sports. I think anybody that's watched the video, it's heartbreaking, it's terrifying. It's not a good look for the police, but that's not the discussion we're having here. The discussion I want to have is the protesters immediately thinking, hey, let's go to the sports arena and protest. And I think that's the position that Colin Kaepernick and others have put sports in. And I think it's, if I'm an athlete and if I'm someone that makes a living covering athletics, I'm not sure if that's the lane that I want to be in. I'm not sure if it's good for the overall health of sports that that a situation goes on in a community involving the police and people's instant thought is, let's go to the sports event and shut it down or have a protest there. I don't think that's good for the long-term health of sports, and I think this is the position that Kaepernick and others have put sports in.
I think that's accurate. I mean, we want sports to be a diversion to take us away from all of the other ills of life. I do think in this particular instance, it's Northern California where Kaepernick started his protest. It's also Sacramento, and this is a brand new arena. It's the kind of sparkling center of downtown, and it was a uniting force. Remember, Sacramento was as good as gone from there. The Kings were as good as gone from there. So I hear you, and I agree with you that every time there's some tragedy or some protest, it shouldn't be at MSG, it shouldn't be at Staples, it shouldn't be at the United Center in Chicago. I think Sacramento is a little bit different because that is it was the immediate event, and it's a communal gathering place, and it's different.
Not the worst point.
Just in this particular instance, it did in fact work. I hope it's not a precedent for any time there's any sort of us versus the police. It's a fight just to get into the arena, to enjoy a game, to get away from the rest of life.
Well, look, if that happens, and what you said is legitimate, so be it. Stephon Clark's life is more important than a basketball game. And I like what the fans did because now you're taking it to power. If you start messing with these owners' money, because 2,000 people could watch the game last night? You start messing with the owners' money, they will get something done. They will get this change, and that's how you address these things. A bunch of athletes who are millionaires but not billionaires, a bunch of black people in the streets screaming about it it may not change it. But when you get people with money and connections to politicians and powerful people, that's when things change. So if it takes going to the games, going to the Knicks game, going to the Spurs game, whatever it might be, to get it changed, I'm fine with it.
So it happened in Sacramento, and it's very unfortunate. Me and my wife and kids, we were talking about this exact subject last night in the house. It happened at the game because there's nothing else to do in Sacramento. If it's in LA, New York, Chicago, or a bigger city, they can protest in different areas, different venues. They knew they had an audience that were going to the Kings game. They knew that. And so it's one of those things where sports is what you said. It's supposed to be your getaway where you can just enjoy the game for a few hours and then get back to regular life. And you don't want, oh, man, I wonder if we go to the game today, are we going to be able to get in? What's going to happen? Or is it peaceful? For the most part, it should remain peaceful. But there's times where if somebody really is trying to get in that game and they're pissed off, they're getting into that game, and then now something can happen violently. And so it's a good thing that it was a peaceful demonstration.
Agreed.
But it can turn into something much worse.
There is one other place in Sacramento you can protest. It's the state capitol is actually right down the street.
But nobody's going to be there.
I understand.
No. The media is going to be there. And again, that's been my issue from the very beginning. I've tried to say, look, it's the politicians that are controlling the police force. It's not the owner of the Sacramento Kings, and I know he has influence over the politicians. But again, if I'm not bringing that problem to my job where I make money, where I enrich myself and then am able to enrich other blacks or whatever cause that I want to support financially, I'm taking it to the police or to the city council places. I'm taking the protest there. And again, I hear you, Chris, but I'm just not sure if sports wants to be the place where, we have a problem with society, we go there to sports to hash it out. Again, when your whole business model has been built on, hey, come here, have this enjoyable evening, you can let your thoughts go and not think about serious things, that's your business model. Because again, once you do that, Chris, you may never put that genie back in the bottle, and sports may never return.
You're right.
They don't care.
Don't you think Vivek Ranadive, like you said, talk to some politicians in Sacramento to say, look, we can't be having this happen anymore. Something has to happen. So that's my point. I don't want this to go on for years, but we're talking about sports as a diversion. Stephon Clark's family, this is not, there's never getting away from that.
I understand.
That's not a diversion.
You can be respectful of that.
Let me finish this. My family's dealt with this, and it never goes away. Dealt with it in 2012.
But getting some justice might help.
It never goes away.
I get that, of course.
You never bring an Anton Butler back.
But you still want justice, and if doing this brings it about or prevents it from happening in the future, it's worth it to not have a freaking basketball game.
I would agree. But the problem is, if it's effective, there are others that believe this may not be effective and might lead to more Donald Trumps popping up in Sacramento and other places that hold prominent positions. There is another side to the argument. To a protest that appears to be over, that of former 49ers safety Eric Reid. Reid was one of the first to join Colin Kaepernick in kneeling during the national anthem and continued his protest through all of last season. Reid recently claimed the protest was the reason he hadn't been signed yet in free agency, and now he says he'll find other ways to affect change.
We understand that you gotta change with the times. So I'm not saying that I'm going to stop being active, because I won't. I'm just going to consider different ways to be active, different ways to bring awareness to the issues of this country, to improve on issues happening in this country. I don't think that it'll be in the form of protesting during the anthem, and I say during because it's crazy to me that the narrative got changed to we were protesting the anthem, because that wasn't the case. But I think we're gonna take a different approach to how to be active.
I think those are some of the wisest words Eric Reid has said. I think the financial realities of the decisions he made are coming to bear, and he's pivoting. And again, I think he's a symbol of connecting it to the previous conversation, is all of sports may come to the reality that he just came to. And, I think he and Colin Kaepernick are paying a price for decisions that weren't well thought out.
Well, it's pretty obvious that there's at least a portion of, whether it's sponsors or fans, that have voiced their concerns about this to the Jerry Joneses and to the NFLs of the world, right? We saw it in the TV numbers, and there's a reality to it. And I thought the smartest part about what he said is how the narrative did, in fact, change. They couldn't control the narrative of why they were protesting or what they wanted to change. It wasn't. Thought out. And it spiraled out of control, and it became something that I think Eric Reid probably at its initial start, one, he wanted to support a teammate, and two, he wanted change in his community, which are all healthy things. But once it spiraled out of control, do you want to be the guy that bails on your teammate? Do you want to be the guy that, I'm not protesting anymore? And I think that's the future for anybody who wants to be a part of social change, is whatever you're going to do, whatever you're going to protest, you have to think of the unintended consequences, and you have to think of exactly what do I want my message to be, and am I willing to stand up in front of my locker and say, here's why I'm protesting, here's the change I think, and here's how I think we can go about it, and here's how I'm willing to sacrifice myself. Those things weren't done, and I think that's why the protest becomes one to which it leaves Colin Kaepernick out of the league, Eric Reid out of the league, and others still trying to figure out what to do next.
When they started this protest, is what you said. It wasn't well thought out, but they didn't believe it was going to get to this stage and this platform where everybody across the league would be kneeling, and the owners and sponsors would be complaining about X, Y, and they didn't think it would get to this point. And now that it has, it's very unfortunate, because he should be signed. Colin Kaepernick should be on a team. Reid, since he's come in the league, has been a top 10 safety.
No.
Yes.
Pro Football Focus had him this year as 30th ranked. Again.
But no, you got to think now. He sacrificed for the team and moved to linebacker.
I got it.
He should be signed.
Kenny Vaccaro hasn't been signed. There's other safeties. Reid should probably get signed. At what price will be the debate.
You don't think this has to deal with the anthem issue with him?
Right now, at this point, it's too early. There's a bunch of safeties that haven't been signed. He's not that highly rated. And then it's going to come down to what's he willing to sign for.
I did feel like, look, when you live a while, you understand that everybody makes some compromises. In a society like ours, everybody has to make compromises. I felt like when Colin Kaepernick took his stance, now maybe it was just not thought out. You might be right. I actually thought he was more courageous than people gave him credit for because he was expendable. It's one thing if he was a superstar like he was a few years ago and a team probably would have signed him just because he was so good. The fact that he was coming off the bench and they could have cut him at that moment and nobody would have thought anything about it, I thought that meant he really looked at the situation and said, I may be out of the league going forward, but I'm willing to take this stance.
This is so huge, though. Now, I haven't been on the team in 6 years, and I'll be out. People will still ask me, if you were playing, would you take a knee? And it's crazy that this is galvanizing. Everybody that enjoys football, they talk about this.
Here's my issue with the young guys in the NFL and with just young people. There's this belief you don't have to consult with older people, that their wisdom is no good and it's irrelevant and it's a waste of time. But again, someone wise that was looking out for Colin Kaepernick or Eric Reid would have been said, hey, man, I'm going to tell you, you're going to pay this price, this price, this price. This thing is going to spread, blah, blah, blah. You're going to become pariahs to NFL.
Now, if you don't care about that, if you don't care about, then you do it for others. If that's fine, you do it for others.
You also think at the time, I don't care, but then all of a sudden you realize what it feels like.
Or you think, I'm good enough, it's not going to affect me.
Yes, right. This is what all young people think.
It's like being how many people in college were radical? And then you get into the real world and you need a job and you put that suit on. I went to a radical college, Oberlin College, where people had all types of crazy stuff.
Dude, I was at the Million Man March front row.
Look, as far as black people, no matter how militant, and I've got militant friends, Afrocentric friends, they even admit, no matter how militant or Afrocentric you are, you still have to live in this society and the way we do things, and you have to compromise.
The last point on this is what you eventually realize, though, is that everything you think isn't right. And life experience, will hopefully show you the other side of the argument, and you'll move somewhere in the middle. All right, welcome back to the show. Doug Gottlieb, Chris Broussard, and Jason McIntyre are back. Let's move to the NBA, where the Lakers lost their fourth straight last night, falling to the Pelicans by 3. It didn't help that Lonzo Ball had yet another horrible night, shooting, going just 2 of 15 from the field, including 1 of 12 from three-point land. Even still, Luke Walton didn't blame Lonzo for the loss.
We didn't lose because Zoe didn't make shots. Would we have a better chance if he hits a couple of those down the stretch? Sure. But the majority of the reason on why we lost was because we didn't make a commitment to keeping our people in front of us, and they just continued to lay the ball up at the rim.
All right, last night wasn't Lonzo's only rough night lately. In his last 7 games, his numbers are just plain embarrassing, shooting 25% from the field, 14% from 3, and 33% from the free throw line. Look, I am now ready to reach a conclusion.
Okay.
LaVar Ball's antics from starting a year ago, back at UCLA, to now, too much pressure for Lonzo. It is now inside his head. This is like a golfer with the yips. This is like John Lester not being able to throw to first base. This is in his head. LaVar's antics, the wrong fit for this kid. And I love Luke Walton's comments at the, basically he's giving Lonzo enough rope to hang himself. That's what he's doing. That's why he's not, you want to shoot from 3? You want to, no problem. He wasn't the problem. Lonzo, keep hanging yourself because you and your father have created a mess in your mind.
Well, I mean, I assume you're meaning the father in terms of what we thought he would be. Is that what you're talking about? Because the dad isn't involved now. I mean, I don't even think they...
I said going back a year, the whole Lonzo hype machine is blowing up in Lonzo's face.
Yes, some, but I also think that they knew, maybe they didn't know the depth of how much work there was going to have to be done in his game, because the shooting is a problem, but it's only part of the problem. The bigger part of the problem is you got to be able to finish. You know, there's plenty of guys.
1 of 12 from 3.
Hold on, but Ben Simmons can't shoot at all. Can't shoot, but he doesn't, right? But Ben Simmons can finish at the rim. This kid can't finish at the rim. So there's a lot of work to be done. They're not willing. They're not even close to bailing on Lonzo Ball.
I didn't say that.
I understand.
I said LaVar's is blowing up in Lonzo's face. Remember when Nick Anderson missed the free throws?
Yeah.
And came back the next year?
He's never the same.
Yeah.
This is the problem with your statement about a year ago, LaVar has created this monster. Lonzo has had great stretches. I mean, just 3 weeks ago, people were like, he's there now.
Only because we're short on time. You know, I've had good stretches of dieting.
But this is only a bad
I've had good stretches of dieting, Chris. Do I have the problem under control?
This is a 7-game stretch.
Do I have the problem under control? No.
I can show you a 5-game stretch where he shot 58% from 3.
7 out of 82. Whitlock, we'll run an 82-game stretch here on this show. I'll have an awesome week. Next week, I'm not going to be so hot. You run hot and cold. He's averaging 10, 7, 7, 7. You know what Magic Johnson averaged as a rookie? When he had Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, the MVP?
You stop.
18, 7, and 7.
Just don't mention Magic and Lonzo in the same. Look, man.
He also didn't play for about 15 games, too.
George Gervin created the finger roll. We are now seeing the creation of the fingers crossed. That's his shot. He shoots and he crosses his finger.
The one thing I'll give you is the free throw shooting. That is something wrong with that.
The whole shot has to be strapped
but he's hit the shot at times. I mean,
finger cross.
Hey, LaVar got the memo.
He shoots with
LaVar,
both
stop
of his,
talking.
he shoots with both of his
He's not in the country.
Exactly.
LaVar